howdy. You all back? Well, I'm here too. And we're getting ready to read some more in this chapter 2. That's where we are, chapter 2. We're trying to check out and see what Thomas and Ella are up to. Right. Okay, where do we leave off? Alrighty. Oh, Ella was just trying to eat more so she could ignore the feelings that she had and that she felt in the room as well as in her heart. So let's see what Thomas is going to do. Well, noticing Thomas's emotional condition, Bruce gently speaks up. There were those times, Thomas, that you seemed to enjoy doing things with your Uncle Charlie, like the fence mending. Thomas looks at Bruce surprised and says, "You remember that too?" Didn't think anyone noticed such a thing. You are right, though. For a few moments, once in a while, I could see what Uncle Charles got out of the land, the ranch, the horses and all that stuff. Ella speaks up to change the mood as she quickly says, "Well, what I remember best are all those times Uncle Charles would come out with his camera and say, 'Action!' in his loving yet commanding way." She makes a chuckle at that memory, then not liking the emotions attached to that thought either. Thomas recalls, he sure bought a lot of those Super 8 films. Bianca shares what she knows. We still have the projector in those films. Charlie would watch at least one of them each night. Isn't that right, Mother? Maria allows a tear to fall down her cheek as she quietly says, "Yes, dear." He would sit there just loving on those two, the both of them, night after night. Ella really gets choked up. She can hardly swallow her food. She tries to cover up her emotions by saying, I'd like to burn them. Silly little girl I was to fall for his scripting." She stuffs her face with more of Maria's wonderful waffles and ham, trying to stop what she is feeling. Paul is careful to get her reactions by leaving the camcorder on the table so she doesn't see it's in use. Ralph has finished eating and is standing in a prime place to capture both of the kids' reactions during this tense time. Thomas looks disgusted at his sister and speaks up. "Well, I may not have been the ham that you were. I do know that I did my fair share of playing along with his scripts. In fact, I think I'd like my children to see their daddy doing dumb, silly kid stuff." Maria is pleased and asks Paul to pass Thomas the platter of sausage. Thomas grudgingly accepts the food and loudly says, "Guess I'd better eat up all your good cooking, Maria. Not sure when we're going to make it back here with all the delays we're encountering," and he looks straight at Ella. Ella defiantly sits up and agreeing with him says, "You are so right, Thomas. I'd better have another waffle and another piece of ham. Oh, Maria, where is that wonderful peach jam of yours?" Bianca happily gets up, walks to the serving island in the kitchen area and says, "Right here on the counter, I'll get it for you." Paul is surprised and delighted and calls out, "Peach jam? I haven't had that since my grandmother died a few years ago." Maria smiles at Paul as Bianca brings the jam to the table. She says, "Well, I am a new grandmama. In fact, with 2 grandbabies on the way, so you can have some of mine. In fact, I'll give you a jar to take home with you when this is all over and done with in a few days." Grinning from ear to ear, Paul reaches for the jar of jam that Bianca sets right in front of him and says, "Thank you, Maria. I do accept that offer." Maria excuses herself to go about doing her morning household chores, or so she says with a wink of an eye to Bruce. Then she calls Bianca to come and join her. Bianca quickly follows her mother out of the kitchen. Paul gratefully opens that jar and gets some jam to spread on his biscuit, then passes the jar on to Ella. Ella and Paul continue eating. Thomas is disgusted at her stalling and calls out, "Come on, Ella, you can't be that hungry. You're just a little bit of nothingness. Can't take that much to fill you up. You're eating enough for 2 people, for heaven's sakes." Ella totally ignores him and continues eating. In fact, she reaches over and puts another sausage on her plate, just to irritate Thomas, and oh, it works. Thomas is totally irritated. Paul shrugs his shoulder and adds more sausage to his plate, too. The rest of them decide to have some more of Maria's good home cooking, too. Ralph likes the thought of that jam and comes to get some of it on a biscuit, too. Thomas slowly reaches for another biscuit and puts more butter and jam on it. Just enough to finish off his glass of milk. Well, that's what he tells Bruce. Bruce quietly suggests, "There is plenty of food still on these platters, so don't be shy. Eat up. Remember, we have quite a hike ahead of us today, and we won't be stopping for lunch." They all agreed, nodding in agreement, and quietly eat some more. For a while. Occasionally, Thomas throws hateful looks at Ella, but she totally ignores. No one is saying a word. Finally, when Maria and Bianca return with their arms full of boxes and bags, Bruce stands up with his foreman voice and says, "Time's a-wasting. We need to get out on the trail." Thomas smiles and says, "That sounds just like we're headed out for a fun trail ride or something." Bruce heads for the back door, gets his hat off the rack and says, "I'll get the pack horse from the stable. He's almost loaded and ready to head out. You can come and help, or just show up when it's time for inspection." Ella looks with wonderment at Bruce, saying, "I remember. You would say that to every guest at the Dude Ranch." Bruce looks at her with a smile and says, "And it works to get up and going. So, are you joining me now or later?" Then Bruce turns and heads out the door. Thomas and Ralph quickly move to get their backpacks. Ella, not wanting to be left behind, quickly responds, "Well, I need to get my backpack." Then, as she's getting up, she adds, "From the looks of that back door cubby section, you boys already have your things right here." She quickly heads to the back wall to get her hat and calls out, "Let's get this over with. I'll be right out." She gets her Queen Elizabeth hat off the peg and heads to the kitchen saloon door. Paul grabs his backpack and follows her. "Really?" Ella blatantly asks him. Paul just smiles and simply says, "That's my job." He follows her as she quickly goes out the kitchen swinging doors and up the stairs like a squirrel with an acorn going up a tree. Paul leaves his backpack on the settee, then strides up the stairs after Ella. He's trying to film Ella as they go. She goes directly to her room and is just right up the stairway landing. Excuse me, that's my dog. He'll quiet down. Somebody got too close to our fence. Yep, there they go. Okay. Whoops, I skipped too many pages. "Surprise," Ella says when they get to the room. "I'm packed and ready to go." Ella gets her backpack. Then back down the stairs they go, quick as a rabbit going down the rabbit hole to get out of the reach of a hawk. Then out the front door she goes. Paul grabs his backpack, then heads out the front door and is surprised that they make it around to the stable so quickly. Then he notices, back door, front door, doesn't matter. The stables are south of the house and between the 2 doorways. Ralph and Thomas, of course, are already at the hitching post. Thomas is trying to be helpful by giving the horse some oats before they head out. Ralph is in full business mode as he's walking slowly around to get the best angles of Thomas working. Ella briskly walks right up to the house, strokes the horse's neck and says, "My, you are a beauty. Not a black beauty. You're a chestnut, beautifully red in the sunshine." You look just like a champion." The horse neighs, and Alice smiles as she gently strokes the horse's neck several times. Paul is taken back by her kindness to the horse. He thinks, perhaps there's help for this self-centered woman. Bruce has checked and rechecked his list of things they can do without on this trek, which does not include the mini horse first aid kit. That is just as essential as the regular first aid kit for people. He is deleting a few things that he doesn't feel a need for this trail ride. Well, trail walk or hike or trek, whatever they're going to call it. Or is he making room for something that he thinks will be needed more than these items? Just then, up runs the ranch dog, a big, lumbering golden lab, and jumps right up on Thomas, who joyfully says, "Oh, there you are. I knew there would be a young dog running around here somewhere." He reaches down, cuddling and petting the golden lab. A bit rough, little boy-like, and yet he is tender with the dog. Ella jokingly says, "That dog is older than you are." Well, in dog life, that is. Then she kneels down so the dog can come to her, and she talks to him softly saying, "Well, hello. What have you been up to this morning? I didn't see you at all yesterday." Well, we really have come to the end, and I can smell it. Yep, my lunch is ready. Sketty's on the stove. I had it warming up. Leftovers, you know. Oh, Sketty leftovers are really much better. So, well, you go on. Have a lovely day. And remember, you could be reading right along with me. You can go to gramajeanbooks.com and, check out the author and information there. And you can see my sketches there on the sketch page, gallery. And you can order your own book. Well, I'm going to say bye-bye for now. Remember to have a lovely day as you go about doing what the good Lord would have you do with gentleness, kindness, and caring. Bye-bye. Love hugs from Grama Jean.